Hey guys, Jerome Maldonado. So I want to talk to you guys today about what to look for when you're buying land. I get a lot of people, and when I'm working with them and they're asking me, Jerome, I want to buy land, build houses, and they go out and they start looking for lots, and then they come in, they go, I found 13 acres, or I found 10 acres, or I found 5 acres. And I say, okay, great, what are you going to do with it? What's your plan? And they go, I want to subdivide it, I'm going to build a subdivision. And they've never built a house before in their entire life. And so I sit back and I say, okay, you could, I mean, I love ambitious people, right? I love when people are super ambitious. But one of the things I always tell people, I say, okay, well, there's a barrier of entry to be able to go in and buy land and start building houses. And if you've never done it before, and for most people that are not financially affluent, the reason they want to buy land and build houses is to become financially affluent from buying land and building houses, because I can teach you how to go out and make over $100,000 every time you build a house, and walk away with a profit of 6 figures if you follow our business plan. But it all starts with the land. So really important. My personal advice to most people who have never bought land and built houses before is not to go and get super ambitious buying large parcels of land that have to be subdivided, and here's why. Because one of the first things you want to look for when you're buying land is you want to look at what type of infrastructure is available. Infrastructure being the electric, the gas, the water, the sewer, and you want to make sure that you have all of your utilities available at that lot or someplace close. And if you don't, what is the cost to get those utilities to that lot? And what is that cost going to add to the price of the land? Because your profitability really starts when you go in and you buy your land. And so you may get a great deal per acre, per lot for the land itself, but if you land up burying yourself in utility costs, for sake of example, let's say I tell you guys, go out and build a $450,000 house, but do not spend more than $65,000 for the lot. So you go out, you find a perfect lot that's $65,000, but lo and behold, it has no utilities, and so you spend $20,000 getting electric, another $10,000 getting water, another $10,000 getting sewer, and another $5,000 getting gas. You've just spent over close to $100,000 on that lot, if not more. And now you're sitting at a point where all of your utility costs just sucked $30,000, $40,000 of your profit out of your bottom line. And so when you're first buying land and building houses, always take into consideration what the utilities cost to be able to build that house on that lot, and what the cost to be able to facilitate those utilities being brought to them. Like these ones, you'll see a transformer, a pedestal, that's actually a pedestal, but you'll see transformers and you'll see electric, and then you'll see the manholes, and you'll see that the water lines are available. I simply ask the realtors. I'll also go in, I'll check with other homeowners, and I'll check, you could go down to your city municipalities and ask your water authority where the water lines are. They graph them. Most cities, even small municipalities, they have them now on graphs. And so you could look on a computer and you'll have all these purple dots, you'll have all these blue dots. The purple dots are typically gas, the blues typically water, and then you'll have all your red lines like for your electric, and yellow lines for your gas on these charts. And so what lands up happening, you can see exactly where they run. So your municipal public work employees could pull this up for you and share it with you and say, well, we don't have the utilities on this lot. And a lot of times it's not even that complicated. They can typically do it really quick. And 99% of the time, the realtors have it. So you don't have to jump through hoops to find out this information 9 times out of 10. But you do want to ask, and you do want to check and see what the availability and the cost to be able to put that infrastructure in. Now, some lots that are more rural, you may want to consider the cost of a well. I had a client today call me and say, Jerome, I found some lots. Happens to be in North Scottsdale area, and one of the first questions I asked, I said, what's the availability for water and sewer? And she came back and said, those are good questions, I have no idea. And then I said, will they allow water and sewer on that lot? And so I told her, call the state engineering department, call the water authority, and find out. And then I want you to, if you can do a well, call and find out how much a well is going to cost you, because a lot of times wells in most areas are going to cost anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 depending on how deep they have to go. So if you take an average cost of about $20,000 for a well to be installed, and you don't take that into consideration in part of your build cost, you're going to overpay for your land and then land up squeezing your profit margin because you have a $20,000 well to be able to consider that you didn't consider when you first bought that piece of land. And so always consider your utilities. Now, I'm building over in California right now. And one thing that we're doing up there that I haven't done for many, many years, I had built one house in my entire career that was 100% solar. And the only reason that I built it for these people was because they found me building another house. And they said, hey, would you be interested in building an all solar home for us? There's no power where we're going to be building at, and we want to do it 100% solar. I had never done one before. So I bid and I bid the price of what I thought was extremely expensive. We made a great margin on the build, but the people were a significant pain in the rear end. And I'll tell you that through the end of the build, that was when I decided I will never build a house for a home for an end user ever again. I was going to build spec homes, and I was going to build them, then sell them. And so the business model that we utilize is always based on spec homes to be able to buy land, build a house, and then resell it without having to deal with the end user. And so when you're buying land, what I learned from dealing with that solar installation was how involved it was when we got to lighting fixtures, the type of lighting fixtures, when we got to how many watts that we were going to be able to utilize in that house. And so I always now take into consideration when I build in areas that have energy codes like California, we have to comply with current energy codes. And we have to have so many energy credits on every single house. And so in that area, we're using zero gas, 100% electric, and everything is done on solar. We're required to do a 100% solar build when we're building down the Palm Springs area. And so I had never considered that before. And so when I was first buying these lots, before I purchased them, I took into consideration the expense of what I was going to pay to put solar panels and the expense of being able to run, because when you do solar, you still have to bring the utilities. So if you see the electrical boxes on the house, you still have to be able to bring the utilities in, and you still have to be able to pull the main electric panels into the houses. Because what happens is you harvest that extra electrical power that isn't utilized through the solar energy, and you sell it back to the utility company. So they harvest that energy and you sell it back, and you actually get a credit for it. And so for those of you guys who aren't taking advantage of those energy credits, you need to. And so if you're considering buying land and you're considering doing solar, never forget to take advantage of the energy credits if you have them available to you in the municipality that you're actually building within, your city, your county, so forth and so on. Another big issue that I've ran into over the years, and you have to consider, is wetlands. Flood zones and wetlands, ladies and gentlemen, those are huge factors and huge variables that you want to consider anytime you're buying land. You'll spend thousands upon thousands of dollars reinforcing the foundation, structural engineering, and being able to rectify wetlands if you don't consider them when you buy the land. One of the first things, especially if I'm buying it at sea level, that I always ask about is I ask about flood zones in any area that I build in, but I always ask about wetlands. Because in the Northwest, where we're building at in Washington State, it isn't a matter of it having wetlands. I have to go in and prove to the city, even if it doesn't show wetlands on the lot, that there's no wetlands on the area. And so you always want to consider the cost to build when you're dealing with wetlands. We've had to come in and do a lot of infiltration and then take advantage of being able to do retention ponds and moving a lot of dirt work, where we'll spend an extra $60, $80, or even $100,000 just on dirt work to account for wetlands. We had a project that we were doing up in Washington State, and we started excavating an old house that was there, and the ground kept seeping water, and we thought there was a water leak. We thought we hit a water line. And so after weeks, literally weeks, of trying to figure out where this water was coming from, we've soon found that there was a little aquifer bleed where there was water that just came through the actual lot 5 feet down from where we were excavating. Had no idea. And so we literally had to put a purging system so that we could get the retaining walls up and account for the build to be able to get the structural walls up. Had no idea that was there. Added an extra $80,000 to our build to be able to put some pumps in there, take care of the wetland that was there, that we were unaware was there when we started excavating. And thankful that the build was actually a $1.5 million build. We were able to absorb the $80,000, thank God, and we still came out with a good profit. Plus, because of all the appreciation of real estate, we were able to take advantage of it on the back end from the appreciation and the values of the market when we underwrote the deal for lower money. So just small considerations that you want to take, that you want to make sure of prior to purchasing land. Another one is road easements and access easements. I remember buying a piece of land in one county municipality where there was a small road that ran through this man's lot, and I just assumed when I bought the land that I had road access to that lot. It was filled in with weeds, but you could tell that at one point in time that the ruts in that road were utilized for access to that back lot. Well, lo and behold, I purchased the land, I closed on the land, and this is back in like 2002, and I couldn't get access to the land because when I closed on it, that easement had been abated. Nobody had utilized it for a given amount of time, and so there's a certain amount of time for easements that if they're abated by the state or municipality, you can no longer utilize those unless you can prove that there has been access on them in a shorter amount of time. And so I was landlocked. I couldn't get access to that land. So I fought with it for 2 years. Finally, I sold the land at a discounted price to the person who actually owned the access to that property and wouldn't give it as access to it. And we landed up losing time. We actually didn't land up losing money. When I say a discounted price, it was a discounted price of what I would have made being able to develop the land, but I landed up just selling it to them at a break-even profit, at a break-even price. And it was a lose situation because I lost 2 years of my time fighting over access, where you don't have to go in and worry about that if you listen to some of the things that I look for when I'm buying land. So road access, easements, in a master plan community like this, it's real simple because there's driveways, there's access points, and it's in a master plan community that's already permitted and submitted to the city. But you want to make sure if you're not buying land on a public road that you have access to that road off of private easements or private access that's already designated for that lot. Just something to be able to check for. And so as I cram my brain and I think about other things that you want to look for, there's many others. But ladies and gentlemen, it first starts with the land itself. Is it usable? Is it in flood zones? What's going to be the cost for me to grade this land to build this house? Is there rocks in the soil? What's my subgrade? Is there clay in the soil? You can't go in and build on clay because clay is extremely pliable when it gets wet. And then clay is extremely hard when it gets really, really dry. So if you're in areas that have a lot of clay and you ever see somebody watering around their foundation and they have no plants, it's because they've had a drought and they want to make sure that that clay stays pliable, because if they don't and the clay contracts, you'll actually get structure cracks all the way up your house. And so people don't think about that sometimes, but I sit back and I tell people, you got to consider the groundwork that's underneath the house that you're building, because it all starts with your foundation. And so in areas that you have, like we live in the Rockies, we live in mountain areas where there's a lot of aggregate and there's a lot of mountain rock in our soil. And so if you go in and you start hitting hard rock and tractors can't go in and level that, you have to figure the expense to go out and be able to get that foundation put in. So always take into consideration the subgrade that you have to deal with prior to buying that land. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're buying land and building houses, keep it super simple. Don't go out and try to develop an infrastructure of homes unless you get the experience of what's involved in building 1 home, 2 homes, 3 homes. Maybe on your 4th or 5th home, you could sit back and say, hey, I'd like to go in and build 10 homes on a small subdivision where I cut a street straight up, build 5 homes on each side, and get the experience of putting in all the raw costs of infrastructure as far as roads, curbs, gutters, all the hydrology for drainage. You're going to put in all your electrical, your gas, your phone lines, your cable lines, water and sewer. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want more content just like this, click and subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.